Good afternoon or evening. I really enjoyed thought-provoking discussion. Our distinguished speakers, Air Vice Marshal Mahmoud Bhai, Air Commodore Shafiqur Rahman সাহেব এবং আমাদের লেফটেন্যান্ট মেজর জেনারেল ফজলে ইলাহি আকবর চেয়ার আবুল হাসান স্যার Shamapa এবং Shashim Bhai. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to bring some provocative ideas on behalf of NCP, but before that I echo many of the things that has been said, discussed here, especially in relation to our foreign policy limitations, the integration of our defense and foreign policy, and the whole gamut of the state of affairs. Firstly, I think this our foreign policy infamous punchline, that's how I would like to say, that friendship to all, malice to none, which is incorrectly ascribed sometimes to Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, which is not. It was first said by Hossein Shohid Sohrawardi in 1953 or 4 before the US press. I think the origin of this is the background of the NAM, non-aligned movement. And I think as a bloc, you can have a foreign policy like that. But as a country, and as I was discussing with some of my colleagues here, it's not only naive, it's totally a scandalous idea that you have a friendship to all and malice to none as a foreign policy of a sovereign state, because it's theoretically improbable. As a sovereign country defined by the Westphalian or post-Westphalian order, you have a border and you have a you maintain standing troops to protect the border. And sometimes, in order for the protection of the collective interest of the people, you sometimes have to be violent, unfortunately. And that's not what malice to none means. That's one thing. And also friendship to all is a very skewed idea. And I don't think anybody in their right mind in the contemporary world can say that. You can send 1 million people, you can push 1 million people to your border and I can still be your friend. If you don't take honest, measurable, honest, practical steps. So that's, I think, the beginning of my take. I think I agree that this cannot be our foreign policy punchline. Instead, from NCP, we would like to propose that engagement to all, I think some of the speakers said, and unilateral hostility to none. That's how I would put it. I would put the unilateral word here. That, okay, if somebody is not hostile to me, I will not hostile to them. But if somebody is hostile, sometimes happens in a foreign policy or the defense policy, I cannot remain too nice or naive to them. Few questions for our foreign policy. I think our previous speakers has also touched base on this, and I noted down my notes that balancing three significant global forces is one of our primary foreign policy and security challenges. One is India, one is China, and one is the US. Can we engage all of these forces to our benefits? That's one question I think we all have to contemplate in order for us to have a viable strategy. Can we walk into the delicate fine line, fine thread by balancing their strategic interest in the region? So their strategic interest and in South Asia or in the Pacific region. Can we walk the fine line? How do we bring symmetry to this seemingly or very apparently asymmetric relationship? All of these are very big powers, and our relation is quite significantly asymmetric. What should be our strategy to bring some sort of symmetry in this relationship? What is our national security doctrine? That's even more fundamental question. We don't know. I think we should have one, and we should work for one. And then how do we separate our economic interest from that of the political interest? Or more interesting question would be, can we do that? And if we cannot do that, do we have a strategy how to deal with divergences when there will be divergence on these issues? From NCP, and since some of the discussion came that we cannot think of a foreign policy without integrating our defense policy into it, and from NCP, I think we very much buy this idea that we cannot have a foreign policy, and we must have an integrated foreign policy and defense policy. Some of the suggestions came from the audience that we must have a powerful air force, which NCP is also, I think, very much in our 24 points demand. We systematically, categorically said, and we will outline in a longer paper, what do we mean by our strong air force. We also offered an idea that Bangladesh, being a riverine country, it's the largest delta in the country, is the rivers like our blood, lifeblood. Our defense policy must be rooted in the defense of the rivers. We must have planned strategically how we can defend the country only through rivers, because if we can do that, that's our geographical advantage. So river-based integrated defense strategy. We spoke about the cyber command, which is happening all around the world. I think a few countries, they have a solid cyber force. We must know, because the internet is creating avenues for opportunities, both economic or otherwise, but it is also a significant national security threat. How do we safeguard our national security? I think cyber command will be one of them. Third elements, I think we must have a dual use R&D. Every nation from Germany to the United States, when they rose to power, I think the dual use technology, dual use knowledge, dual use R&D is the one thing that we should contemplate. Our military has to be integrated into some of the research labs. Our research labs should integrate our military. Our universities has to have labs with the first class research facilities that invite or integrate our military use. The final one, I think, which is the most provocative one, I think at our NCP's doctrine, we being a significantly strategically disadvantaged geography, I think we cannot have a solid and viable defense unless we have a second strike capability. We do not have a strategic depth. Our country can be overrun by our perceived adversary in less than 24 hours or 6 days or 7 days. What should we do in case that happens? And since second strike capability involves nuclear doctrine, we want to also be mindful of that. Being an NPT signatory, we don't want to become a nuclear state, but I think what we propose that we can become a non-nuclear second strike capability countries. That means we have a significant defense capabilities that can strike back even if your mainland is attacked and taken over, which means you have a solid submarine-based strike capability, second strike capability. And that's, I think, our NCP's foreign and defense policy integration, that without a solid defense policy, you cannot have our viable foreign policy. Now, on the question of crude foreign policies, I'm a person, again, most of the speakers here, I think, have emphasized, whatever you emphasized, fall into the criteria what we call the realism. But realism for small states like Bangladesh, crude realism has problems. It invites problems, because if every country pursues its own interest, it is a huge disadvantage for smaller countries. So we cannot absolutely rely on or advocate crude realism. What we propose from NCP is, I think, pragmatic realism or principled realism. That means, of course, as a state, our first priority is to pursue our national interest, and we project power as much as we can. But we are also mindful that sometimes the global institutional capability, rule of law, is a safeguard to countries like us. But then again, I think we are balancing what they call is cynical realism. Sometimes realism means absolutely ugly realism that you pursue, like Donald Trump, someone is saying, is a transactionalist. So that's cynical realism. We don't want to integrate that into our foreign policy, but also we want to reject the naive idealism that institutions are the panacea for our security and defense in interest. I think that's also pretty much naive in the contemporary world. We must balance this. I'd like to end with a couple of quotes that I borrowed from Morganthu and Amitabh Acharya. Yeah, I'll end it just 30 seconds. Morganthu said that interest is defined in terms of power, but must be tempered by moral restraint and prudence. So that's where I think my pragmatic or principled realism comes from. Interest, of course, is the key, but also it must be tempered by the restraint, moral restraint. And Joseph Nye, he also famously said that durable influence must come from legitimacy, not coercion. So I think both of these quote underscores that foreign policy, this is not singular doctrine that we can adopt as a small state. It must be hybrid doctrine. And again, I thank you, the organizer. I think we should have more and more discussions along with our foreign and defense policies. We should reject any unilateral coercion from our neighbor or whoever outside. Thank you.